Happy Friday, pushing the limits. So glad you can join us, the most interactive show in the Valley, and I would argue across the country. And appreciate all of you joining us on all the social media platforms, not just KSHP, FM AM dial, but of course on the Occupy Democrats Network and so many other platforms, YouTube, X. Is that what they call it now? X? I'll ask Don Lemon since he interviewed Elon Musk. But we have a lot to get to today. We got some great guests lined up for you today as well, and a lot to talk about. And I like to get right down to it, ladies and gentlemen, because you cannot make this stuff up within the Republican Party and the MAGA Republicans. So Laura Trump, who is a disgrace, I think most reasonable people would agree that Laura Trump has zero credibility and she's a thief. She helped Donald Trump funnel money through his charitable organizations. So she announced today that she's hiring a guy by the name of Scott Pressler at the RNC to be in charge of ballot chasing. Now, I've had a couple run-ins with Scott Pressler. I'll get to that. But before I do, I want to give you a little bit of background on who this guy Scott Pressler is. So he's an openly gay man. Anybody who knows me knows nothing wrong with that, right? Even though he's in a party that spreads bigotry about homosexuality. I'll get to that. But, you see, Republican Party has had to recoil their relationship with Pressler many years ago. And seeing this is something that the Republicans and Laura Trump aren't talking about. Yeah, but I'm going to share it to you right now. So Scott Pressler previously worked with the Republican Party and Virginia operatives until the party decided to cut ties with him in August of 2016. Why did they do that? Well, I'll tell you why. Pressler engaged in sexual activity inside a Virginia Beach office the RNC shared with the state party. He then posted explicit pictures of the sexual encounter on Craigslist. Yes, that's correct, ladies and gentlemen. Craigslist. Does anybody use that anymore? Now, after party officials were made aware of these photos, Scott Pressler was confronted about what had happened, and seeing the writing on the wall, he resigned. Federal campaign finance records confirmed the state party stopped paying Scott Pressler just 2 months before the 2016 election. When Scott Pressler was attempted to be reached by phone, he hung up on the journalist who called him and did not respond to any subsequent messages detailing these allegations that were confirmed by 3 people aware of the situation. So Scott Pressler, at least in my opinion, is what so many bigots on the far MAGA right hate. He's gay. Somebody like that you would think would be welcome in the Democratic Party, but this type of behavior with sexual gay acts and then subsequently putting it on Craigslist, and yet this is the kind of person that Laura Trump wants to talk about ballot chasing. Now, Scott Pressler was a guest speaker within the local Republican Party here in Las Vegas. I showed up to the event. And by the way, the event hosted by some within the Republican Party who are now facing fake electorate scheme charges, including Jesse Law. I showed up to that event not because I wanted to cause a ruckus or yell or scream. I wanted to hear what Scott Pressler had to say. I show up, I don't say one word. Pressler didn't want me there. And they kicked me out of the event. Why? Because I'm the kind of person that challenges people and his BS. Scott Pressler is not the guy who is, out of the goodness of his heart, wants people to sign up and vote. No, he pressures people to vote for Donald Trump because he's a MAGA moron. And he's actually worked with right-wing fringe groups that are anti-gay bigots. And Scott Pressler is gay, an openly gay man. What does that say about him? This is the kind of person that Laura Trump is hiring to work within the Republican Party. Yes, that's right. Laura Trump is hiring the man who did sex acts in this building that the RNC shared with the state party and then put some of those pictures and posted them on Craigslist. You cannot make this stuff up. But should we be surprised that that's the moral compass of where the Republican Party is at today, ladies and gentlemen? No, we shouldn't. And while all this stuff is going on, have you heard about this story coming out of North Carolina? The Republican nominee for superintendent overseeing North Carolina's public schools and its $11 billion budget has made comments including threats, baseless conspiracy theories, and calling for the execution of prominent Democrats, and she's the Republican nominee for the superintendent in North Carolina. This is a clip, Jake Tapper, CNN, reporting on this story. You cannot make this stuff up.
Mr. Robinson is not the only controversial statewide candidate in North Carolina currently, which brings us to the Republican nominee to run North Carolina schools, who has tweeted about putting Democrats to death. Her name is Michelle Morrow. Here's one of her tweets. Take a look. It's a doctored photo of former President Barack Obama in an electric chair. Morrow wrote, "Death to all traitors, hashtag Obamagate." Again, this is the Republican nominee to oversee public schools in North Carolina, home of the Research Triangle.
You cannot make this stuff up. What if this was a Democrat, which it wasn't? Can you find me a Democrat running for office recently or somebody in office that is calling for the death of Donald Trump or the death of Republicans? Well, this woman is. She's a Republican. She's a MAGA Republican, and she's a nut job. She's calling for the execution of Ilhan Omar, Roy Cooper, Andrew Cuomo, Hillary Clinton, Chuck Schumer, and other prominent people such as Anthony Fauci and Bill Gates. The execution. She puts up imagery of Barack Obama in the electric chair. And she's the Republican nominee. This isn't just some random troll on social media that's a MAGA supporter who wears the Trump knee pads. That would be bad enough. We can't normalize this sort of behavior. It's despicable. And when she was asked to comment on it, or anybody within the Republican Party or in her campaign, dead silence. We can't normalize this kind of behavior. We can't. Not only is it wrong and despicable, it can also incite violence. I had a man in studio yesterday who worked for our former governor, Steve Sisolak's campaign, Democrat. Steve Sisolak was harassed coming outside of a restaurant. He and his family, he had to rush to his car because a deranged individual followed him, yelled expletives at him. Something horrible could have happened. I'm glad it didn't. That deranged individual committed suicide a few months later. Some of these people are extremely mentally ill. And I would actually say that if this woman, who happens to be the Republican nominee for superintendent, isn't mentally ill, she's giving reason for mentally ill people to do harm to others because we disagree with them politically. What would happen if this was a Democrat? I think it's a very fair question to ask. What would happen if a Democrat that's running for office in a big position, I think we all could agree, when you're running for superintendent of schools with an $11 billion budget, that's a big position. That's a lot of responsibility. What if it was a Democrat? I'll tell you what would happen if it was a Democrat. This would have been leading on Sean Hannity's show. It would have been leading on Laura Ingram's show, The Evil Racist Witch. It would have been leading on all the right-wing networks. OAN would have been talking about it all day today. All day. I guarantee you OAN won't even bring this story up today. Neither will Newsmax, because they're cowards. And, the bottom line is zero credibility. Zero. Sean Hannity won't even mention this story today. Why does it always seem to come from the right most of the time? Why is that? Death to Barack Obama. By the way, Obama's not even in office, but hey, I'm sure race has nothing to do with it, right? I'm sure race has nothing to do with it. All the white Democrats out there, but this disgusting excuse for a human being decides to depict Barack Obama sitting in an electric chair. Oh no, but Republicans, these MAGA Republicans, they're not racist at all. Now, if you can find me a Democrat that's doing this sort of stuff, I guarantee you I'll be the first one to call it out as well. If a Democrat that is running for office in a position like this one, the superintendent of schools in North Carolina, is putting pictures of Donald Trump in the electric chair, I will call that out as well. If a Democrat out there is naming 8 or 9 Republicans, wants them executed for treason, I will call that out as well. Find it for me. Go ahead, MAGA supporters, find it for me. Because it's not happening today, and it's coming from the right, hence inciting violence, hence what took place on January 6th. The Proud Boys and all these other right-wing fringe hate groups. I've had it. Do I think all Republicans are bad people? I all the time I say no, absolutely not. I have so many good friends of mine who happen to be Republicans who would never stand by this sort of behavior. It's awful. It's wrong. And this woman is despicable. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If she stays in this race, it says all you need to know about Republicans. It says all you need to know about Republicans, ladies and gentlemen. There's no place for this. No place for this. And now Laura Trump is announcing that Scott Pressler is going to be in charge of ballot chasing at the RNC. The guy who does sex acts in offices that are paid for by Republicans and post imagery on Craigslist, and that's the person that Laura Trump decides to choose. You can't make this stuff up, ladies and gentlemen, and we can't normalize it. We have to continue to call out this despicable and disgusting behavior. Whether it's the Scott Presslers of the world or this despicable woman, Michelle Moreau, this nut job conservative activist who's calling on death to Democrats in office for treason, we need to call it out. And if it continues to make Republicans look bad, so be it. Guess what? They deserve it. They deserve it. Where is the Republican leadership in North Carolina standing up and saying, you know what? This is terrible. I'll give some of them credit in Boston. If you remember, we had that despicable human being on the show a week and a half ago. She lost her race, thank God. She praised Adolf Hitler. She praised Hitler and asked for really the destruction of all Jewish people. The exodus is the word that she used. And I had her on this show to call her out, of course. At least the Republican Party there begged her not to run. Thank God. Where is that in North Carolina? Shouldn't Republicans out there and Republican leadership be begging this woman not to run? Silence is deafening, ladies and gentlemen, because not only her and her campaign are not responding to comment, but the Republican Party there is not responding as well. Says all you need to know about them, ladies and gentlemen. All right, so I talk a lot about Republicans, particularly MAGA Republicans, and every people that happen to be Republicans that call out Joe Biden for being in the bunker, claiming that he has Alzheimer's, that, you know, he's too old, he can't walk, he can't talk. We all saw the State of the Union address. And even after the State of the Union, some of these MAGA Republicans, he was on drugs. You know, it's dangerous to keep talking like that because not only is it wrong, and none of these people have any medical degrees at all that are making these sorts of statements, they're also lying instead of talking about the real issues. But, you know, there's a lot of Americans that happen to be on the right that are buying into this propaganda. And that's what I would call it, propaganda. So the guy we have with us on the line right now, his name is Brad Bowman. He's previously served as the executive director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, and he has decades of experience and leadership in progressive communications. And I wanted to get him on to talk about this topic because he's very knowledgeable about it and the harm that it's causing, not just Democrats, maybe not just Joe Biden, but the country. And Brad Bowman joins us right now. Brad, I do appreciate you being here, my friend. How are you?
Brian, it's great to be here. And good Lord, I wish I was actually in Vegas rather than virtually in Vegas with you. So
it's a fun town, Brad. I've watched a lot of college basketball the last couple of days. I'm going to some games tonight, and Vegas is a very fun place to be. But we have crazy lunatic MAGA Republicans here, just like I'm sure you do where you live. But you know, I try to call them out every day if I can. All right, so I wanted to bring you on, and thank you for being here, for talking about the dangers when so many people bring up Joe Biden and the fact that they believe he has Alzheimer's, he has a bad memory, he's in the bunker. Brad, you've heard it and you've been hearing it for a long time. What do you make of this strange phenomenon from people on the far right when they bring this stuff up?
You know, it's so interesting, Brian, that like if we really want to break down what was at the root of this latest set of attacks against Joe Biden being old really comes down to stuff that a partisan political operative who pretended to be a special prosecutor dropped into a report that completely exonerated the president of any legal wrongdoing. But because, frankly, MAGA Republicans are incapable of doing anything except gaslight the American people, what they did was that they turned the special counsel's report into basically a document that would attack the president's mental capacities, which is absolutely ridiculous. And, Brian, one of the things that drove me crazy about that report and the things that were put into the report was simultaneously you have the president doing the right thing. He didn't have to participate in this fully. He didn't have to do what the special counsel asked him to do. We've certainly seen where Donald Trump certainly did everything in the world to not participate in legitimate special counsel investigations into the numerous crimes that were committed during his administration. But Joe Biden, the stand-up guy that he is, the guy who's saying, yeah, you know what, I got nothing to hide because I did nothing wrong, he participates fully in this thing. And what does he get? Well, he gets attacked because he's old.
Yeah.
And then you get a bunch of Democrats
Yep.
who are afraid to actually say what's on their mind and go, hey, wait, what are you talking about? Why are you attacking this guy? Look at what he's done for this country.
I do think it's getting better, though. We had Eric Swalwell on the show last week. He completely clowned the Republicans. Ted Lieu, I thought he did an absolutely great job. So I do think there are some Democrats that are getting more aggressive, and I appreciate the fact that they're doing that. But, doesn't it come down to this? I mean, Hur decided not to file charges against Joe Biden. And the reason why he didn't, whether he wants to use the term exonerate or not, which I guess he didn't, the bottom line is it didn't meet the threshold. And don't you find it interesting, Brad, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more today, that you have a judge overseeing the classified documents case of Joe Biden. If they throw some charges out, the MAGA Republicans will say, great judge, you're doing the right thing. But then when a judge yesterday decides, no, we're not going to throw out this case. Bad judge, must have been paid for by George Soros. I just find it's so interesting because MAGA Republicans call it a double standard. Yet when they agree with something that the judge does, great judge. And when they don't agree, it's all, fake news and George Soros and paid for by the Democrats.
I couldn't agree more, Brian. And to be completely honest with you, the Republican Party, and frankly, the United States of America, when Republicans are in power, are in an abusive relationship. And that's what it is. Anyone who's been in an abusive relationship with anybody understands that the behavior of MAGA Republicans, the way in which they talk, the way in which truth is subjective, the way in which they are constantly weaseling their way through argument after argument without ever saying anyone other than them is right, is classic abuser behavior. And as a country, the reason our democracy and our institutions are crumbling is because these people don't believe in anything other than the exercise of power, and the exercise of power for their own very limited use and their own very limited control. And it's really, really scary because that's the stakes that we have in front of us in 2024. And we got to get out there and we got to fight as hard as we can.
I agree with you, Brad. And, there are a lot of realities that a lot of people in this country just are, whether they're complicit, they don't want to pay attention to, what's going on. The reality of the situation is Joe Biden is not facing any charges. Joe Biden, there's no evidence that he has committed any crimes. What his son may or may not have done, whether it be his taxes or having an unloaded gun for 13 days. It seems to me the only gun that Republicans care about in this country is Hunter Biden's gun that he illegally had for 13 days, by the way, that he didn't commit a crime with. But the reality of the situation is whether they want to believe it or not, doesn't matter, right? Donald Trump is facing 91 felony counts. Donald Trump is a liable rapist. The judge characterizes it as rape. That's the way I'm going to characterize it as. That's the bottom line. And, when I talk to MAGA Republicans, or even people that I wouldn't even consider MAGA, but they say, yeah, I'm going to vote for Trump over Joe Biden. The question that I always ask them, and they don't ever really answer it, is how do you get up in the morning and look in the mirror? And how do you support a guy, Vote for a man who is a liable sexual abuser. Forget about how much you might hate Democrats or Joe Biden, or you think Joe Biden's too old. How can you support that man? And I never get a straight answer from them, or they'll go after the jury, or they'll say it was tainted. It was a Democrat operative judge. They'll come up with every excuse in the book, just like they do every single time Donald Trump opens his mouth and he attacks Nikki Haley's husband. He attacks John McCain. He attacks brave men and women in uniform, calling them suckers and losers. Or he'll talk about injecting yourself with disinfectant, and they'll say, oh, come on, that was in jest. He was just joking. He's an entertainer. It's always an excuse, isn't it, Brad, from these MAGA Republicans, and it's indefensible.
Always an excuse. And one of the bigger problems is, Brian, is that those of us on the other side of the argument, some of us, I should say, we're so used to trying to turn the other cheek or trying to rise above. We lose sight of the fact that a lot of the American people, they don't see politics or think about politics the way those of us who do it all day long do it. And when all they hear are a bunch of MAGA Republicans parroting the same talking points over and over again with subjective truth that continues to change, but sounds strong, and, with full-throated defenses, these folks are moving forward through life. And then they see us kind of equivocating or otherwise worrying or, trying to play a fact-checking game. The truth is that we lose those folks in the middle who probably want to do the right thing, are looking for folks like us to tell them it's okay, that, the things that Biden is doing in the White House are damn good. I mean, look, it's I'll be the first to say it. I am probably way to the left of the president of the United States. But you know what? When I stack up the record that this guy has had over the last 4 years versus what is before us, if Donald Trump were to return to the White House, when you look at Plan 2025, when you look at all of the things that are dripping out about how they intend to completely contort the executive branch into an exercise of power that is going to restrict our rights, take away our freedoms of speech, destroy the lives of people that disagree with him. I mean, there's no choice.
Sure.
Folks have got to do it. And the thing is that it's not enough just to show up to the polls. We have to show the folks who are on the fence or who are looking at us and going, is this really okay? We got to tell them, yes, it is. And guess what? It's existential.
Absolutely. I agree with you. Brad, I would like to think that, most of the extremism in the political world today comes from the far right. I don't think there's any question about that. I do have some criticisms for Democrats. I try to be fair on this show, and I'm not a Rashida Tlaib fan. I never have been. I think she's an extremist. And when you have Tlaib and Bush vote that they don't have necessarily a problem with Hamas coming into this country, I personally believe that Democrat leadership needs to call that out. I want to hear Hakeem Jeffries get up there in front of the podium and say this has no place in our party. That is probably my biggest criticism for Democrats today, is that the few that are extreme within the Democrat Party need to be called out. And Hakeem Jeffries, who I actually have a lot of respect for, and I like Hakeem Jeffries, I just feel like, how do you feel about that? As somebody that is probably further to the left than I am, do you agree? Do you disagree? What are your thoughts on that?
I fundamentally don't believe that a safe and secure border is incompatible with us being a nation of immigrants. I think that those two things can exist at the same time. The fact of the matter is, it certainly existed when my great-grandparents came through Ellis Island. It certainly was the case when, waves and waves of folks have come since. And to be completely honest, we do ourselves a disservice when we don't talk a little bit about how we are ultimately creating that safe and secure environment for everyone. And that means for everyone. It doesn't mean for citizens. It means for anyone and everyone who lives within our borders, and how we do it in a way that also promotes the strength that this country has by being a nation of immigrants, by being a place that embraces it, and that ultimately is a beacon of hope for anybody who wants to
Agree.
come and have
Listen,
a better life.
I agree with everything you just said, but I think hopefully we could also agree we don't want terrorists coming into this country. We don't want Hamas coming into this country, and it'd be nice if people like Talib could understand that. At the same time, I agree with you. The overwhelming majority of those that are in this country that are undocumented are great people that want a better life for themselves and their families. I'm with you 150%. I don't think and I do think that there is a crisis at the border. And I know some people would disagree with me on that. I think it's been a crisis for a very, very long time under a lot of different administrations. I don't think this is a Democrat problem. I don't think this is a Republican problem.
That's absolutely right.
This is an American problem. And, listen, I've been talking about this border bill a lot. I've gone through it. It's not perfect on either side. But when you have guys like Langford and MAGA Republicans that even Katie Britt that sit at the table and work on this deal, and then the Katie Britts of the world vote against the bill because Orange Man tells them not to.
Wasn't that the most duplicitous thing you've ever seen? Months and months of wasted time coming to the table, coming up with something that would ultimately benefit everyone. And then the day it gets released, everyone who sat there and negotiated it turns their back on the bill. What exactly is going on there?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think we all know what's going on is that they bow to Donald Trump and they'll do whatever Orange Man Gito Jesus tells them to do. And that's exactly the state of the Republican Party today. It doesn't mean every Republican feels that way. Listen, Langford is a big MAGA supporter, right? I disagree with him a lot on policy, but I give him respect for sitting to the table and telling the truth and saying, hey, this is a decent bill. It's not perfect, but we worked hard on it. I have respect for guys like Mitt Romney and Liz Cheney, even though I disagree with a lot of them on policy. Adam Kinzinger, they have a moral compass. And I will always go with it. Chris Christie, I'll go with the moral compass first. And I just think there's so many within the party. I wanted to ask you this question because you guys have worked with over 80 members of Congress, right? Democrats. What would you tell somebody that you work with within the Democratic Party that is a congresswoman or a congressman? How do you even discuss and work with somebody like a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Lauren Boebert or a Matt Gaetz? Because these are despicable human beings. And I would also say not very bright people either. When you represent somebody that is in Congress, what advice would you give them? How do you even work with these people and have a conversation with them?
Man, that's such a great question. I want to say two things on this. The first is I was the executive director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus between 2011 and 2014. And during that period, it wasn't nearly as bad under the Capitol Dome as it is today. That's not to say that there aren't places and spaces where folks can work together. But to be completely honest with you, even in just the last 10 years since I've, been out of government service, I can tell you that the quality of Republican that has come into Congress has gotten precipitously worse, has become precipitously more marginalized and precipitously more MAGA than they even were 10 years ago. 10 years ago, we could find things that we could work on together.
Right.
There were still Republicans who would work across the aisle on, and actually still a couple of them do, on things like the Older Americans Act, on the Ag Bill, on things that actually have a real meaty core to them of things that their constituents rely on. But this is probably the most dysfunctional Republican caucus that has ever existed. And, don't take my word for it. Mm-hmm. Take the word of a guy like Ken Buck, the congressman who retired last week, who when he came into office, we all thought was probably among the most loony of the MAGA Republicans. Mm-hmm. But has since been replaced or otherwise, represents now kind of the more moderate faction and is like, I've never had a more difficult time in my entire political career. I'm out. I can't do this anymore. Mm. So when in an era when even Republicans can't figure out a way how to work with other Republicans, I don't know if I would necessarily be in a great situation in terms of trying to get members that I worked with to actually reach across the aisle. Yeah. And honestly, there's nothing sadder for the American democracy than that
Right.
fact, because everyone loses.
I agree.
It's not a game. Like,
I agree.
people's lives are on the line.
I know you're a lifelong Democrat, but you might disagree with this, but I've said this time and time again, and I blame a lot on the far right today. Don't get me wrong, but the two worst words in this country are Republican and Democrat, because too many people, especially on the right today, but too many people make decisions based on what's better for their party rather than what's better for the country. I will give Democrats a lot of credit. They want to do something at gun control, not because they want to remain in power, because they actually care about public safety. So many MAGA Republicans don't. They want to do something about the border. You could make the argument that why didn't Joe Biden try doing this a couple of years ago? But hey, he's trying to do it now. So if Biden tried it a couple of years ago, MAGA Republicans probably wouldn't pass a bill back then either. So it's strange times we're living in today. Last question for you, Brad. And I want to ask you this. If you were PG-13, I guess, if you were in a room alone with Donald Trump, closed doors, what would you say to him? I got to get you thinking now, right?
I mean, this question, like, I can't even imagine a world in which this would happen. But if I were in a room with Donald Trump, I probably would ask him the question, who hurt you? Who hurt you? Like, so many of the outward manifestations of this guy's personality, who he purports to be, the tough guy act, the things that he does, are all psychological defense mechanisms of somebody who is deeply pained and deeply hurt. And I would want to know who did this to him, who turned him into this.
I think we know the answer to that.
We do.
Fred.
His dad.
The guy that was arrested at a Klan rally. I think he turned Donald Trump into one of the most insecure and mentally deficient people. But you know what? Here's the thing, and I think we'll agree on this, Brad. There are a lot of people out there in this world, sadly, that are extremely insecure people. There's a lot of people in this world that have, mental issues, and I feel bad for them, and I want them to get help. But there's not a lot of people out there, those kinds of people, that sexually assault women, that have 26 women that have accused him of sexual assault or rape, by the way, including Donald Trump's ex-wife, in court documents, or that have been sued civilly thousands of times, that are blatantly racist, bigoted people by nature. Donald Trump is that person. And while I agree with you, somebody hurt him. He was raised that way, perhaps, but he's just an awful human being. And when Republicans can't call that out and can't at least own the fact that you are supporting a man who literally is a liable sexual abuser, which he is. And when you have Nancy Mace on television talking about what happened to her when she was 16, which is awful, by the way, and then trying to turn it on George Stephanopoulos, these are who these Republicans are. If we even ask the question, how can you support a liable sexual abuser? They try to, how dare you ask that question? But let's talk about Hunter Biden's penis. I mean, you can't make it up. Brad, I'd love to have you on again, man, and talk further with you. We could certainly continue the conversation.
Oh, I'd love that.
I'm up against a break, but before I let you go, how do people follow you and follow what you do?
Oh, they can find me at Brad BAUMN on every single social platform. And yeah, Brian, this has been great. I would love to come back at some point. Let me know.
I would love to have you back, Brad, and I really do appreciate you taking the time. You have a great weekend, my friend, and when you're in Vegas, hit me up. All right.
You know it.
All right. Thanks, Brad. Appreciate you, my man. Brad Bowman, everybody joining us. Boy, he's worked for a lot of Democrats in Congress, Congressional Progressive Caucus he's worked with as the executive director. Do appreciate his time. Okay, so if you're just joining us, as you know, this is usually the time where I take phone calls, and I will do that. But I just want to review with all of you before I take a quick break of what we've been talking about. Laura Trump has announced she is hiring a man by the name of Scott Pressler at the RNC to be in charge of ballot chasing. No big deal, but maybe just a small tidbit that I just was sharing with all of you earlier that I will share with you again. Openly gay man, absolutely nothing wrong with that, even though so many in the Republican Party would call him a sinner, particularly the evangelicals out there. So what did this guy do? Well, it turns out that he engaged in sexual activity I won't go any further than that. Graphic sexual activity inside a Virginia Beach office the RNC shared with the state party. They split ways with him. A couple weeks later, he resigned. And he posted those pictures, by the way, on Craigslist. Boy, I'd love to get my hands on those pictures, not because I can't wait to see them and it would arouse me, because it wouldn't, but because I think we need to expose him literally to the world and the judgment of Laura Trump and the Republican Party. It is absolutely disgusting. And while all this is going on, the Republican nominee for superintendent overseeing North Carolina's public schools, I went to public school, by the way, $11 billion budget, is the same person who's calling for the execution and the death of prominent Democrats and put imagery up on her social media page of Barack Obama in the electric chair. Does this surprise any of you? Does it not surprise any of you? Why are prominent Republicans in North Carolina not calling this woman out? Why is she silent? Why is her campaign silent? Why are the big players that are Republicans in North Carolina silent about it? And why isn't Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax covering this story? Why isn't Fox News, OAN, and Newsmax not covering the fact that Laura Trump is hiring a guy within the Republican Party who did some sex acts at a Virginia Beach office the RNC shared with the state party and then posted them on Craigslist? The first thing they'll do is show naked pictures on the House floor of Hunter Biden. Why are they not covering these two stories? These are the two stories that we're covering. Oh, yeah, one other small tidbit. The judge overseeing the Donald Trump documents case decided, no, she's not. But yet a couple days ago, MAGA supporters out there were praising the judge who threw out parts of a case. Now, all of a sudden, it's paid for by George Soros. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. We're going to take your calls on the other side. Here's the number. 702. We got a lot to talk about. I'm sure a lot of our listeners are fired up. 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you would like to be a part of the conversation, that number again is area code 702-221-SAVE. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. We'll be back in 90 seconds with your calls.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking to you for our veteran. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, decorated veteran community leader, county commission. No veteran has served on the commission for 30 years. Why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
Buying or selling a home is a huge life event that requires guidance from an expert in the industry and community. My name is Blake Wynn. You may recognize my name as my grandfather was the best governor the state of Nevada has ever had. Growing up in Las Vegas, I've come to know this community intricately. Now, I am raising a family here as well. So I understand all the issues impacting our home and quality of life. As the top realtor for the #1 real estate team at Keller Williams, you can have confidence in my experience, knowledge, and track record. When it comes to buying, selling, or investing in real estate, choose a name you can trust and someone who understands the community you call home. Call Blake Wynn today and experience the difference of a trusted expert. 702-540-3311.
All right, welcome back. It is Pushing the Limits. Thank you so much for joining us on a Friday. Those of you listening on the FM dial, you could be on the Occupy Democrats Network, my personal YouTube page, by the way, which is at PTL Radio Show. Again, at PTL Radio Show. We're covering a lot of stories before we get the phone calls. Number 702-221-7283. Bad news for Donald Trump, federal judge, actually appointed to the bench by Donald Trump, rejected Trump to throw out his classified documents criminal case. He said at one point that the dismissal of the indictment would be difficult to see, and then it would be quite an extraordinary step to strike down an Espionage Act statute that underpins the bulk of the felony counts against Trump, but that his lawyers contend is unconstitutionally vague. So bad news for Donald Trump. On one side of things, right? On one side, you have the MAGA supporters out there. When some of the charges are thrown out, they'll praise the judge, they'll praise the attorneys, they'll praise our justice system. But when something doesn't go Donald Trump's way, oh, it's tainted, it's George Soros, it's the Democrats. These idiots can't have it both ways. And speaking of having it both ways, I've been talking a little bit about this case, if you're just joining, about this woman, Moreau, Republican nominee for superintendent overseeing North Carolina's public schools, $11 billion budget. CNN has been covering this story. Fox News isn't covering it. OAN isn't covering it. Newsmax isn't covering it. A woman really, let's just call it for what it is. She's calling on the execution, the killing of prominent Democrats that she disagrees with. Here's Jake Tapper with the story.
Mr. Robinson is not the only controversial statewide candidate in North Carolina currently, which brings us to the Republican nominee to run North Carolina schools, who has tweeted about putting Democrats to death. Her name is Michelle Morrow. Here's one of her tweets. Take a look. It's a doctored photo of former President Barack Obama in an electric chair. Morrow wrote, "Death to all traitors, #Obamagate." Again, this is the Republican nominee to oversee public schools in North Carolina, home of the Research Triangle.
Oh, and it gets worse. She also went on social media and said, in regards to Barack Obama, I prefer a pay-per-view of him in front of a firing squad. She said in May of 2020, responding to a user sharing a conspiracy theory suggesting sending Obama to a prison at Guantanamo Bay. She said, I do not want to waste another dime on supporting his life. We could make some money back from televising his death.
The man is going to get embarrassed.
Yes, he is. Another post in May of 2020, she responded to a fake Time magazine cover that featured art of Obama in an electric chair, asking if he should be executed. She said, death to all traitors. In yet another comment, Moreau suggested in December of 2020 that killing Biden, who at the time was the president-elect, has said he would ask Americans to wear a mask for 100 days. She said, never. We need to follow the Constitution's advice and kill all traitors. This woman is a deranged lunatic. Welcome to the MAGA Republican Party today, ladies and gentlemen. Are these the type of people that you want overseeing an $11 billion budget? What would happen if a Democrat was running for office, wanting to take over an $11 billion school budget, and a Democrat said death to all, Republicans in office, or death to Donald Trump, or death to Matt Gaetz, or Lauren Boebert, or Marjorie Taylor Greene? What do you think Republicans would be saying about that? Again, this would be the top story on Fox News, be the top story on Newsmax, be the top story on OAN. And guess what? CNN would cover it. If a Democrat running for office said things like that, CNN would cover it. I guarantee you Sean Hannity won't even bring it up. It is absurd, and it's ridiculous. Opening up the phone lines now at 702-221-7283. And again, that number, 702-221-7283. Let's start off with Raul. Hello, Raul. Thanks for calling in.
Hello. Hi. We actually, you're talking about violence and violence of the Democrat Party. And you know what? If that's the case, we should all call out violence on both sides. We do. Probably you do agree with that.
Of course, I agree with that. Absolutely.
Okay. But however, let's not forget, Democrats have called for violence towards the judges. I'm going to be honest. Where is the outrage? If you were talking about,
Okay, so give me a situation in the last.
I haven't seen Democrats called out Antifa, BLM.
Okay, so that's not true. Okay, so hold on. Let's backtrack.
I haven't seen that.
Hold on. Raul, let's step back a little bit. So just because you haven't seen it or heard it doesn't mean it hasn't happened. And now I'm going to give you a specific example of how it has. During Black Lives Matter protests, it was Joe Biden, it was Kamala Harris, and many other, hold on, let me just finish the sentence, and many other prominent Democrats that said they do not condone violence. In fact, it was Joe Biden at the State of the Union address just a week ago that said, and he didn't say Republican violence, he said political violence in any way, shape, or form is not acceptable. That would include any Antifa violence or anything. So when you say you haven't seen it or heard it, I would say you have to, with all due respect, open up your eyes. He said it in the State of the Union address just a week ago.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to explain this. Okay, this is the thing. Okay, so if that's the case, why?
No,
why
it is the case. He just said it a week ago. Can you not admit that?
Why is this January 6th defendants, and it's okay for them? But I see, listen.
What? Wait. I'm confused with your question. I
see Democrats who call for violence. Yes, they have been
So
removed.
give me a specific example. Raul, hear me out on this, okay, my friend? If you have a problem and you think Democrats are calling for violence in the last year, I'm going to give you a year. Can you name me a prominent Democrat that either incited violence in any way, shape, or form? I can give you a number of examples of Republicans in the last week. Can you give me an example in the last year of a prominent Democrat that's running for office or that is in office that said something or did something that you think is way over the top? Give me the quote, and I'll happily call it out if you could give me a specific example.
So, actually, I have a lot. Oh, my God, I have a lot.
So give me one. I don't need a lot. Just give me one.
Okay. You know what? So I actually have one that.
Are you Googling on your phone right now, or can you? Oh, okay. So go ahead, Raul. I'm giving you the opportunity. Give me an example. Raul, it sounds like you're on an Obama phone, Raul. I don't know if you went into the other room and did a Google search, but when you're going to make the claim on this show, Raul, you got to lower down the background noise because I don't know where you're at, my friend. So if you're going to make the case, and which is fine, I'm totally happy. I'm totally happy having this conversation.
He threatened the judge. He said, "We'll fill the whirlwind," and that's a threat. I mean, hell, that's a threat.
Come again. Start over. I didn't hear what you said. Go ahead.
He said, was it Chuck Schumer that said, "You will feel the whirlwind"? And
who said that? When? Who said it? What were they talking about?
So this was when Senator Schumer when this was like years ago when he took Schumer took.
Okay. So don't tell me what you think. So sir, Raul, I don't want to know what you think. Give me the specific time it was said, around the time it was said, because I did ask you to give me an example in the last year. Who said it? What's the exact quote? What were they talking about?
Okay, so they were talking about Senator Schumer.
What do you mean they were talking about Senator Schumer? Was it Senator Schumer that made the statement?
Calling for violence and said...
Okay, so Senator Schumer was talking. Is that what you're saying?
I will repeat what he exactly said. Okay?
I'm waiting.
Well, I will repeat what he said. He said, "I want to tell you, Gorich, you will feel the whirlwind."
Okay, so let's go with that for a second. Senator Schumer said, "You will feel the whirlwind." He could have been referring to political ramifications. That is not inciting violence. And I find it very interesting that you blame Democrats for violence, and why don't Democrats call it out? And the one example you come up with is a ridiculous example. I've made statements like that. I'll give you an example right now. Donald Trump and Republicans are going to feel the whirlwind come November. Does that mean I'm inciting violence? No. It's political ramifications for their ridiculous beliefs. That is a pathetic example you just gave. I just gave an example of a woman running for office who's calling for the death to Democrats, okay? And the one example that you come up with is Chuck Schumer saying Gorsuch is going to feel the whirlwind because he might disagree with his political beliefs and there might be political ramifications. Raul, you got to be better than that, bud. I'm sorry. That's a really bad example.
Maxine Waters, he told everyone, well, you know, you need to get everyone up in everyone's faces. And there's video.
Right.
The whole video.
Okay, so let's talk about that. I'm glad you gave that example because that's a perfect example. Okay, so she used the term confrontational. I'm confrontational at the poker table. Does that mean I'm violent? No, it doesn't. The word, now, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't agree with her language. I don't. But there is a difference between being confrontational and calling for the death of people. Can we agree on that?
Well, yeah.
Okay.
And you know,
so you can protest and be confrontational, and we can agree that doesn't necessarily mean you're violent. Is that correct? The word confrontational doesn't mean you have to be violent. Can we agree on that, Raul?
We could agree.
Okay. Give me another example. Okay, Raul, you're 0 for 2. Give me another example, please.
And that goes for both sides.
I know, but I agree, Raul. I agree with you, Raul. The problem I have, Raul, with this conversation is you've given me two very poor examples that do not incite violence, in my opinion. I can give you a number of different examples. For example, when Donald Trump was running for president and he said, "I'd love to punch that guy in the face. If you beat that guy up, I'll pay your legal bills." Quote, that is inciting violence. He didn't say, "Let's be confrontational." He said, "I'd like to punch that guy in the face." I'm waiting for you to give me a direct example and quote from a Democrat who has said anything even close to that, and you have been unable to do it.
Cory Booker, was it the man that you're praising, the one who was the supposed was on TV and said, "We're gonna punch him in the face"?
Cory Booker said we're going to punch them in the face. I don't recall ever hearing Cory Booker making a statement like that. I think you're mistaken there. If somebody made a statement like that, I would call it out. The only thing I'm trying to say is you had a number of examples you claimed at the start of the call. The two examples that you gave were very poor examples. I'm not saying.
I'm going to give you another example. Like, you know, Cory Booker said that in 2019. I feel like punching Trump. And look, I'm going to read the quote. And listen, you can look it up yourself. Okay?
Okay. Go ahead. Read the quote.
He said, "I feel like punching Trump." But those are his tactics. So I'm going to be honest. You want to punch a president?
Okay.
And that time he's president.
So let me respond to that. Let me respond to that.
Oh, I thought Democrats were the party.
Would you? I would like to respond to that statement. If in fact that is what he said, I feel like punching whoever in the face. It's wrong, and it shouldn't happen. The thing that I'm trying to convey to you is I've never said that a Democrat. By the way, I said in the last year, you obviously couldn't give me an example in the last year, but whether it was in 2019 or 2023, it's wrong. I would never say on this show that a Democrat has never incited violence, and I would never say on this show that a Democrat has never said something stupid or said something that could incite violence. The point that I'm trying to make is you're trying to make an equivalence between Democrats and Republicans, and while I agree with you that it has no place on either side of the party, you cannot look me in the eye or say on this show that there is any equivalence. It's far more times coming from the right, way more coming from the far right.
Okay, I get what you're saying. I'm going to use another quote that you guys sniffing and.
What do you
and
mean, you
took it.
guys? Wait, hold on, Raul. What do you mean, you guys? What do you mean?
So no. So what I mean
No,
by
no, no.
that,
Yeah, what do you mean, you guys? What group are you putting me in?
I'm saying what you. Okay, so when Trump was getting impeached for the second
Wait,
time.
Raul. This is important, okay? Because I'm giving you respect here. When you put me in a group of you guys, I'm just curious. What group is that?
I'm not trying to. You know what? I wasn't trying to put you in that category.
Okay,
I'm saying.
fair enough.
Okay, wait. So let me resume what I have to say.
Okay.
So first of all, they took Donald Trump's speech peacefully and patriotically. Make your voices heard. So yeah, we're going to march to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically. They took that out of context. They took many.
Okay. So I don't know what. Okay, let me ask you a question. Since you think they take Trump out of context, by the way, I haven't taken Trump out of context. I speak for myself. I'm going to ask you a question now. Since you think Democrats take Trump out of context, I assume that's what you're saying. If Donald Trump didn't say before the January 6th insurrection, if Donald Trump didn't say that he won the election in a landslide and Joe Biden cheated and the Democrats cheated and he won, does January 6th happen? Yes or no?
You know, I think I remember this question being answered. And you know what?
I'm asking you. I didn't ask you if he has the right. That wasn't the question. I'm going to ask it again. I've answered your questions. Now I want you to answer mine. And I'm going to ask it again. If Donald Trump didn't say that the election was stolen leading up to January 6th, if he didn't say that Joe Biden cheated, if he didn't say we need to fight to take back our country because it was rigged, if he didn't make those claims, does January 6th happen? Yes or no?
I think, you know what, in a way, I think January 6th would not happen if we would have a National Guard.
Okay, Raul, the question was not about the National Guard, and the question was not about if you feel like the National Guard should have been there or security wasn't good. That's a separate question. You seem to be struggling answering my question, so I'm going to ask you one more time and one more time only. And it's not about the National Guard or how maybe you think the Capitol Police weren't prepared well enough. That's not the question. That's a separate entity. I'm asking you a very specific question, which involves Donald Trump and what took place on January 6th, and I'm only going to ask it one more time, now the third time. If Donald Trump didn't say the election was stolen prior to, didn't say that Joe Biden cheated and the Democrats cheated and the election was rigged leading up to January 6th, regardless of your thoughts on Capitol Police, regardless of all that, would it have happened? Yes or no?
It would have not. It would have happened. It would have.
Come again. You're stuttering. I'm sorry. You guys like to make fun of Joe Biden for stuttering. Now you're stuttering. Yes or no? Did it happen?
Okay. It would not. It would have happened if we would have had security there.
Okay.
And,
have a nice day. You're avoiding it and you're not answering the question. I answer all your questions, but for some reason you won't answer mine. So I'll answer it for you. No, Raul. No. January 6th doesn't happen, and I know you struggle to answer that question. As some of my very special MAGA friends, I have to ask them the same question twice, 3 times, 4 times. I probably could have had you on for another half an hour, and you still wouldn't have directly answered the question. No, January 6th doesn't happen if Donald Trump doesn't lie. He lied. He did not win the 2020 presidential election. It wasn't rigged. It was a free and fair election. Joe Biden didn't cheat, and the Democrats didn't cheat, and there's no evidence of widespread voter fraud that could have changed the outcome of the election. It's a very simple answer that you and so many other people, even people that call themselves journalists, refuse to answer because they're so biased. And when I put people like you in a corner, you can't answer a basic question. How could we have any type of conversation when you can't answer a basic question? And then you call into this show and you claim that Democrats are inciting violence. Why don't Democrats call out Antifa and this and that? And then when I asked you to give me specific examples, you had to Google it, and you came up with a couple horrible examples. And then you come up with something that Booker allegedly said back in 2019. But you said you had so many examples and you can't answer a basic question. I can't have a conversation with you if you can't answer the basic of questions, which is, did Donald Trump win in 2020? No, he didn't. Does January 6th happen if Donald Trump isn't lying? No. And if you want to talk about the National Guard, it's also a lie because people like you want to blame Nancy Pelosi, right? Nancy Pelosi and Mitch McConnell, where there's now video evidence that has surfaced where they wanted help. Donald Trump didn't ask for help. He sat on his ass for 4.5 hours in the Oval Office, eating his KFC, being the pig that he is, watching television, probably enjoying what was taking place, when maybe people like you were chanting out, "Hang Mike Pence." And while people were killed that day and other officers took their own lives and their families say it was because of that day, they were never the same. But you don't want to talk about that, and you don't want to talk about the fact of how Donald Trump did absolutely nothing. Jack Smith is on to this. And the day is coming. And the chickens are coming home to roost, my friend. And it's not because of something that Maxine Waters said or some stupid, ridiculous example that you gave. It's because of Donald Trump and his behavior. Because Donald Trump and so many MAGA Republicans continue to defend him. They think he's above the law. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? He's not. Orange Man is facing justice. For once in his life, he's going to be held accountable for the despicable things he's done. And I'm tired of people defending him. I am tired of it. I am over it. If you don't want to support Joe Biden because you don't like Democratic policies and you're a Republican, fine. I would tend to disagree with you because I will have my vote for Joe Biden. But if you don't want to vote for Joe Biden, you have that right. But using the excuse or claiming that Donald Trump is some sort of patriot, or you're a patriot because you support Donald Trump, or Donald Trump cares about you and me and he cares about America, you're a dope. Because he doesn't. The only person that Donald Trump has ever cared about his entire life is Donald Trump. Why are you people so brainwashed? And why do you believe the nonsense about how the economy is on the verge of collapsing when it's not? I've given the statistics on this show time and time again. I've given the unemployment numbers. And if the excuse is, well, Brian, the only reason why the unemployment numbers are down so much is because, coming out of COVID. Not true. The unemployment numbers are lower now than they were before COVID. But people don't want to hear facts. People that call into the show, people that watch Fox News and are brainwashed, they don't want the facts about the economy and where we've been trending. They don't want to know the recovery of the economy compared to, other G7 countries that we compare ourselves to. They don't want to hear the facts and the recovery of the economy, but they want to focus on Hunter Biden or this gentleman who just called in, who Googles Maxine Waters being confrontational. They want to focus on that stuff. I was listening to a show, Don't Ask Me Why, a few weeks ago in Las Vegas. When I'm in my car, I usually like to listen to music. The last thing I like to listen to is conservative talk radio. I call it right-wing echo chamber radio. It's really pathetic. Some of the people even in Las Vegas that do right-wing shows are talentless boobs. But I was listening to one of these boobs for a couple minutes as I was driving into work a few weeks ago. And this boob who does a radio show here, who actually is an attorney too, he shouldn't quit his day job. He called John Fetterman brain dead. Now, I would assume that the reason why he called Fetterman brain dead because he doesn't like his politics, but mainly because he had a stroke. So by that standard, does everybody that have a stroke, are they brain dead? I think John Fetterman is a pretty smart guy, pretty well-spoken guy, and considering that he had a stroke, I think he's doing fine. I like his stance on Israel, and actually a lot of people on the right appreciate him talking about the border. But this radio host called him brain dead. And I think it's a defining difference in 2024 between Republicans and Democrats today. I remember when Mitch McConnell, and I'm sure all of you remember as well, when Mitch McConnell had the, I don't know what you'd call it, the freeze out. I'm not a doctor, but I think we all could agree that it was some sort of medical episode. And you had Democrats, people across the aisle that were wishing him well, thoughts and prayers. We hope you get better. The president of the United States, Joe Biden, called Mitch McConnell to see how he was doing, see how he was feeling. Mitch McConnell openly talked about that and said he appreciated Joe Biden in doing so. But why is it when it happens to a Democrat, Republicans, some on the far right, do the opposite? Why is it when John Fetterman had a stroke, Matt Gaetz called him a vegetable? Why is it when Nancy Pelosi's husband was bludgeoned by a crazy person with a hammer, we heard conspiracy theories? Ted Cruz went on social media and endorsed a conspiracy theory that somehow this was Paul Pelosi's lover and that he let him in. Did we hear thoughts and prayers? Did we hear, geez, we hope Paul Pelosi gets better? Sure, some Republicans were doing that. But why were some of these Matt Gaetz, Ted Cruz, MAGA Republicans spreading these disgusting conspiracy theories about Paul Pelosi? To me, it is the fundamental difference between so many Republicans and Democrats today. There are those with empathy, and then there are those without empathy. You know, we see it time and time again. And the former president of the United States, when talking about a school shooting, said, get over it. And you see these Republicans, so many of them, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers, thoughts and prayers. But then when it comes to guns and gun control, they want to make it easier for people to get their hands on guns. Folks, you can't make this stuff up. And I've talked about it before. I've talked about it on this show before. I talked about it in the first segment. And the number to call, 702-221-7283. And again, that number, if you want to be a part of the show, it's 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283. You know, listen, there's a Republican nominee who's superintendent overseeing North Carolina's public schools. She would be controlling an $11 billion budget. She's calling for death to all the prominent Democrats in office. Listen, there's always going to be lunatics out there. It seems like, as I said before, a lot of them are coming from the far right. But why is it that Republican leadership refused to call out this woman? Why is it that those in her campaign don't have the decency to call it out? Why? Why is so much of this coming from the far right? That's my only point. And that's the question that I ask you. Number to call, 702-221-SAVE, 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Let's go to Anthony first. Hi, Anthony. Thanks for calling in.
Hey, Brian. How are you?
I'm doing good, my friend. How are you?
I'm okay. I'm doing good. I'm glad to hear you on the radio, man.
Oh,
Still going.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
It's a witch hunt with Donald Trump. It is.
It really is. That's what they all say. That's what all the right-wingers say.
Hunt.
Yeah, that's what they say.
It's a witch hunt. But it is a witch hunt. You know why? Just like a lot of those cult leaders had those people under their spells and believing them.
Yeah.
He got them believing him. He got a lot of niggas. They believe him. They believe him. He's just a man witch. He's an orange man witch. He's not a green guy.
Orange man witch. I like that. You know, isn't it interesting? You know, Anthony, what would you say to somebody like a Nancy Mace? Like, it's incredible to me. I don't know if you saw the interview she did with George Stephanopoulos, but here's a woman tragically, right? I feel for her. Was sexually assaulted when she was 16 years old. And then George Stephanopoulos, he's not trying to shame her like she claimed. I think it's a very legitimate question when a woman, especially someone who was sexually assaulted, is asked, how can you vote for and support and endorse a liable sexual abuser? I think it's a very fair question to ask. And then they try to turn it on the person who asked the question. I don't see anything wrong with that question at all. Do you?
It's something wrong with them in the head. It's something wrong, and the only thing I can say is that they, whatever they believe for Trump, is all they are that they're for.
Yeah.
Anything for Trump, the switch goes off.
Isn't it interesting that you know, a lot of people that are Trump supporters say, oh, no, it's not a cult. And I respond to them by saying, have you ever seen a malarkey sign on the back of a pickup truck? Have you seen people, so many people decked up in all the Biden gear and all that stuff, the malarkey signs? And, you know, it absolutely is a cult. There's no question it's a cult, you know, and he's a wannabe dictator. We all know that. We saw who he was hanging out with even last week. This guy is a wannabe dictator who I believe admires the Kim Jong-uns of the world and the Vladimir Putins of the world. He is a wannabe dictator.
He gave Kim Jong Un his when I was listening to him, and he gave him his. Just before Valentine's, I said he sent him his Valentine card. He just wasn't sending him his chocolates.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine for a moment? Let's think for a moment of all the innocent, brave men and women, soldiers who died in Afghanistan. Right, a terrible tragedy. Terrible tragedy. You know, Joe Biden goes over there. He speaks with the families. Can you imagine if Joe Biden praised the person in charge that committed those horrible atrocities? You know, Republicans would be livid, rightfully so. The families would be livid. That's what Donald Trump did. Do you remember Otto Warmbier, the young man who was murdered in North Korea? I think we all could agree by Kim Jong-un and his evil, murderous regime. So what did Donald Trump do? He stood a few feet away from Kim Jong-un, the murderer, and he said he believed Kim Jong-un when he said he had nothing to do with that. And Otto Warmbier's parents, can you imagine what they felt? And I believe his mother and father spoke out about it. This is who Donald Trump is.
Yeah. And he always says this. After all of the brave men and women, military status, from years gone by, even my father, who was Tuskegee military, he's gone now. My father would be in his 90s, right?
He would call him a sucker or a loser. I call him a hero who served this country, and he's a hero. Donald Trump called people like your father suckers and losers.
Yeah, and he'll say now is the most important time in American history what these people are making their decision.
Yeah.
Long as it's involving and for him to be the president in American history. Now, oh boy, this guy is a real piece of work. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's a nice way of putting it, but unfortunately there are millions of people in this country that would vote for a liable rapist. I don't get it. Thank you so much.
You know what?
I want to say this though. Thank you for your family's sacrifices, your father's sacrifices. He's a hero.
My brother, my niece, who's over there, my niece who served in military over in just in the 80s and 90s.
God bless them.
You know, young lady, and I'm glad you're still preaching the true gospel, because when people listen to these people like Trump, they're no different.
They're brainwashed, and they're brainwashed.
Who was a cultist leader? That Jeff guy who had those young girls.
Anthony, you are 100%. Anthony, you are 100% correct. Sounds like you have a family full of heroes, and I definitely appreciate you calling in, and I appreciate that. You stay well, my friend. God bless you and your family. Thank you so much. 702-221-7283 is the number to call. Again, 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Carl. Carl is next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Carl.
Hey, Brian. How you doing?
Good.
Good. Listen, you're talking slightly about brainwashing and so forth. Well, actually, with the Republicans, a lot of them, the MAGA people, it's more of a brain rinse because there's not enough of a brain to wash.
That's true.
Still, what I want to talk, I've mentioned this before way in the past. If you look at his crowds, the MAGA crowds who see his rallies, there's something called social psychology. I mentioned the other day about how Trump would actually love to have a meeting with Adolf Hitler if he was around at that time. And he seems to revere these psychopathic dictators for some reason.
Yeah.
But I think that if you look at the crowds from old films of people watching Hitler in Germany when he was making his speeches, and the blank stare look in their faces and their eyes, then look at Trump's MAGA people who attend his rallies and whatever. Mm-hmm. I look at them and I say, psychologically, it's the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Same exact thing.
I just, the thing, Carl, that's mesmerizing to me, you know, I interview people that are, you know, again, people that serve our country honorably, people that I have respect for. And I can't understand how a good father or mother coming from a nice family, as much as they might be a staunch Republican, how they could vote for a man, and I use that term very loosely, an orange man, Donald Trump, who is a liable rapist. I can't understand how much can you possibly hate the Democrats or hate Joe Biden's policies or even hate Joe Biden that you could vote for somebody who is a sexual abuser, no matter how many of his policies that you like. How can you look in the mirror? I ask these people because I just don't understand.
Well, it's not so much of them not liking Trump, is why they're voting for him.
Yeah,
is because they get sucked into this cultist type of group.
Yeah,
and their minds don't separate the fact from the fiction.
Yeah,
if you know what I'm talking about.
I absolutely know what you're talking about. In fact versus fiction, they want to blame left-wing media, and I'm not saying every left-wing entity is 100% always factual, but they want to blame fake news and fake news media. Meanwhile, 7 out of 10 Republicans still think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election. It's called a matter of credibility, and they have none. 702-221-7283 is the number to call, 702-221-SAVE. Let's go to Wendy, who's next up on Pushing the Limits. Hi, Wendy.
Hey, how are you?
Hey, doing good, Wendy. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Good. Well, a few things. I have so many things on my mind. It might be the rest of your day. But yeah, first of all, I'd just like to say my mother is a Holocaust survivor. She is now 98 years old.
Wow.
And, it's just incredible that people can look at this orange man, piece of dirt, and follow him. I listen to him. I watch his body movement. Oh, can I put you on hold? I'm so sorry.
Oh, this will be the first time.
A representative will assist you momentarily.
This is a first for me on radio. Nobody's ever put me on hold.
I'm sorry,
That's
okay. Work. I'll have to call back another time.
That's okay, Wendy. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
That's the first time nobody's ever put me on hold. I was just put on hold on live radio. I wonder what company she works for. I'm guessing she does not work for Donald Trump, and I'm guessing that she doesn't sell the Donald Trump sneakers. You think that's probably a fair assessment? Boy, the call was just starting to get good, too. Thank you for the call, Wendy. You're welcome to call back at any time. But for people that say that this is not a cult, they're bravely mistaken. And people want to claim, oh, look at all the campaign rallies that he had. By the way, I call many of the Trump rallies Klan rallies. That's what I think they are. They're very white. Let's put it that way. And I didn't really talk about this a lot yesterday, but I did want to bring this up today because I think it's important. Joe Rogan probably has the most popular podcast in the world. And he went on his show the other day, and he was attacking Joe Biden, but for this reason, not because he's old or he doesn't like his policies, because he doesn't like a diverse administration. And Joe Rogan was open and honest about that. Now, I don't think Joe Rogan is a very intelligent person. Yes, he has a large following. But I consider him to be no more intelligent than an Aaron Rodgers. They're both conspiracy theorist meatheads. And Joe Rogan appeals to certainly a far-right base of the Republican Party with his horse dewormers and all the other nonsense that he says on his show that is factually inaccurate because he's a dope. But Joe Rogan proved that he's a racist. He proved it the other day, and I don't use that term lightly. Joe Rogan is a racist because he made the claim on his own show for everyone to hear that a diverse administration can't work. A diverse administration can't be successful. He doesn't want diversity. He wants an all-white administration. Now, that's the type of language that a guy like a David Duke would use. That's the type of language that I would assume would be used by some sort of grand wizard. But Joe Rogan said that on his podcast, and Joe Rogan is openly telling you that he's a racist. He doesn't want brown people in administration. What a despicable and disgusting thing to say, by the way. Can you imagine that? We don't want diversity because they cannot be successful. That is exact. When people make statements like that, we have to believe them. We have to believe them when they say something like that. There is a portion, and way too many people in this country, that think the way Joe Rogan thinks. There are way too many people in this country that do not want brown people coming in, legal or illegal. Now, they'll claim, oh, no, I want anybody coming into this country as long as they do it the right way. No. There is a portion of the Republican Party that does not feel that way. They want the country to look like me, look like them. And a guy like a Joe Rogan feels threatened by that. It's bigotry. It has no place in our society. In a perfect world, I want people to come into this country legally as well. Don't always agree with Democrats. I believe if you're undocumented, you probably shouldn't be allowed to get a driver's license, right? You probably shouldn't be allowed to have a bank account. I don't always agree with Democrats, but I also am somebody that comes from, I believe, compassionate. I'm a compassionate person. I want there to be an easier pathway to citizenship for those that are in this country that are undocumented. Joe Rogan doesn't want that. Heck, Joe Rogan doesn't even want legal citizens of this country. He doesn't want a diverse administration. He wants one of the whitest administrations in the history of this country, which is what Donald Trump had. Yeah, how did that work out? So it's frustrating. It sucks that there are a portion of people in the country that feel that way. I obviously am not one of them. But as I said, it's unfortunate. And it needs to be called out. Sadly, Joe Rogan makes a lot of money, and he makes a lot of money for the company and the platform that he's on. They're not going to take him off the air. Look at Bill O'Reilly. He was the highest rated cable news host in the world. How many women did he sexually harass? How many tens of millions of dollars did Fox News had to dish out before they finally said, geez, I think we have to let you go? How many terrible, disgusting, pro-Putin, racist things did Tucker Carlson say on Fox News before they finally said, okay, I think we got to let you go? Because money is more important to so many of these larger companies. It's not Fox News, it's Fox Noise. All they care about are ratings because ratings equal money. Now, it's okay to care about ratings, but also report on the truth. Fact versus fiction. It's okay to care about ratings and to be controversial. That's okay. But to say that the Connecticut school shooting at Sandy Hook didn't happen is not controversial. It makes you an idiot that is hurting people. And that's why Alex Jones had to file for bankruptcy, or at least he is filing for bankruptcy. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. And I do want to, what I like to do on this show is I really do like to talk about people that are helping the community. We'll get to that in a moment. I know we have more people on the line, so maybe we'll take one more phone call before we go to break, because I do love my listeners and that call in. So I will be taking a few more calls before we go to break, as my producer told me that we have some people on the line. All right, we'll go to Al real quickly. What's up, Al?
Hey, Brian, thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And thank you for introducing me to Dr. Smith, Erica Smith.
Mm-hmm.
We met. She's a very nice, charming lady. She's a conservative, black conservative. Yes, there are black conservatives. I got into this. I listened later. I listened in the middle of the interview, and I didn't know she's a very charming lady. And but I want to make a comment on something that you said about white people only wanting the country to look like white people.
I didn't say.
I know a lot of black people.
Yeah, I didn't.
Sorry.
I'm
sorry.
I just want to clarify. I said there's a base of the Republican Party. I didn't say.
I'm sorry, say it one more time.
Yeah, a base of the Republican Party. Not every white person feels that
Oh, yeah.
way. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I apologize.
That's
for that.
okay. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I misheard. You know, I think there's a face of the Democrat Party and a face of every party that wants everybody to look like them. You know, there's a face in the Latino Party that they want all the Latinos to look like, you know, their party to look Latino. And then the face in the black party, I mean, the Democrats and all the black people
So
want,
Al,
maybe all the white people.
So Al, I respectfully disagree with you. Here's why. I think most of people in the Democrat Party want diversity. I think there's a difference between wanting diversity and wanting the country to look white. I think there's a base of the, not I think, I know. There's a base of the MAGA right Republican Party that wants the country to remain to look white. Most of the Democratic Party and those that I speak with don't say, we want the country to be all black. We want the country to be all Latino. No, they want diversity. I think there's a big difference between what I'm talking about and wanting diversity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and let me ask you this. Maybe there is a few, and I agree. I think that there's a few of the people that are black that do want, or well, I don't want to say black, or of the Democrats that want people to look like them. But let me just say this. Okay, Ronald Reagan, which is the big face of the Republican Party, he signed the Latino Heritage Month, and he made MLK a national holiday, and he's a Republican. What do you say about that?
What I say about that is Donald Trump is the opposite of that, and the MAGA Republicans are the opposite of that. Ronald Reagan, sadly, was the president. Passed away, was the president decades and decades ago. We don't have the majority of the Republican Party today do not feel that way. They just don't. The majority of the Republican Party today is the Donald Trump Party. They are MAGA Republicans. They don't accept diversity. They attack drag queens. They attack the LGBT community. And yes, they also do attack minorities from time to time as well. And they don't want a lot of in my opinion, the most of the MAGAs out there, they do not want diversity, and they don't want the country and more brown people coming in, legal or not. So, yes, you can quote Ronald Reagan and some of his policies and things he did. Guess what? This isn't the Reagan Party anymore. It's the Donald Trump Party.
Okay. The thing is that I agree with the fact. I agree with your statement that the Republican Party of today does not hold up to the ideal values. I happen to be an Eisenhower Republican.
Sure.
I'm 64 years old. I became a Republican when I was 14, and I fight for the ideals of my party.
I know, Al, I know you're not like that, okay? You called into this show plenty of times. I know that you're not one of those people. I know that.
Right,
all I'm simply saying is, and you know this is not a Reagan Republican Party anymore. This is the Donald Trump Party. Donald Trump is not Ronald Reagan, and even though I have my issues with Ronald Reagan, I can tell you right now, Donald Trump does not want the country to look like you. He is not trying to make America great again. And some of these Republicans are talking about women. They don't want women to vote anymore. Some of these Republicans don't want diversity. Al, I'm up against a break, my friend. I'm glad you met that lovely lady who's running for office. I appreciate
Erica Smith.
I appreciate you meeting with her, Erica Smith. I think that's awesome, and you're welcome to call back again soon. And have a great weekend, okay, Al?
All right.
Appreciate you.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, so here's what we're going to do. I like interviewing people that help the community. You want to talk about diversity. You want to talk about underprivileged kids, people that don't have money to maybe even afford hockey equipment. Well, the lovely lady we have with us in studio coming up next has a program that actually helps underprivileged kids get involved with certain sports like hockey, and they provide equipment for them. It's such a great story. And I want to end the show today on a feel-good story, and this is one of them, and it's awesome. I can't wait. Gene is going to be joining us next in studio talking about this. Take a quick break. Be back right after this. It's Pushing the Limits right here on KSHP.
My name is Hunter Kane, and I'm talking with you for a call to action for our veterans in Clark County. Who is Hunter Kane? Well, I'm a decorated combat veteran, veteran community leader, and candidate for Clark County Commission. Do you know no veteran has served on the commission in nearly 30 years, which is why our veteran homelessness, unemployment, and suicide rates are out of control. So here's the call to action. June 11th, vote veteran, vote Kane for Clark County. Let's rally behind someone who's been in the trenches, who knows the sacrifices, and who's committed to making a real difference. Join the campaign by searching Elect Hunter Kane on social media or go to www.electhunterkane.com.
Did you know that 99% of air conditioning issues start with airflow issues? Well, guess what? Pioneer Air has your back. They've been operating for 20 years in the industry within the Las Vegas area, large enough to handle all your air conditioning and heating needs, but small enough to know your first name. Pioneer Air focuses on preventative care, much like wellness checks for humans. They believe in wellness checks for air conditioning and heating systems to extend the life of the system you own. So what are you waiting for? Schedule your wellness check with Pioneer Air today. The number to call is 702-831-4840. Here's the best news. Mention this ad and you'll receive 10% off. Call Pioneer Air today. 702-831-4840. That number again, 702-831-4840.
Residents of Las Vegas Ward 5, are you ready for a brighter future? I would like to introduce myself, Dr. Erica Smith, your People's Choice for City Council, with a vision for progress and the fortitude to make it happen. I am committed to moving us forward. I am not just a candidate, I am a fighter for you. With myself on the City Council, you can expect a real change and a community that thrives. Vote for Dr. Erica Smith because together we're building a better tomorrow. To learn more about me and my campaign, go to www.ericaforlasvegas.com, paid for by the Vote Dr. Smith Committee.
Voters want safe gun reform, ban military assault weapons, including AR-15s, have universal background checks, and red flag laws. I am Eva Chase, a candidate for Nevada State Assembly District 16, U.S. Air Force veteran, college graduate, progressive independent candidate, fully transitioned transgender woman, former lieutenant governor candidate for Nevada in 2022, where I received 7,212 votes in the Democratic primary. Follow me on Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok. Donate to my campaign bot fun account and stay progressive.
Who would have thought there'd be so many kids playing ice hockey in the desert? Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, founded by Gina Yusufzai 8 years ago, made it possible for families who can't afford the equipment and fees. Donate today at www.hockeyforkids.org and help us continue making a difference. Join us in supporting Jake Helb's Hockey Foundation and the Las Vegas Ice Warriors, where every kid gets a shot at the starting line. Just a reminder, our website is www.hockeyforkids.org.
All right, welcome back. Thanks for joining us on Pushing the Limits. Appreciate all the support. Show just keeps growing every day, and I'm very humbled by it. What I like to do on a Friday, because, man, we talk about a lot of serious topics on this show. Not to say that, growing up as a kid, if I couldn't, start playing a sport because my parents couldn't afford the equipment, that would be very sad. My parents never had a ton of money, but then again, I never really got into hockey too much when I was younger. But luckily, my parents, had at least enough money where they can buy golf equipment for me and stuff. But as we know, especially, people are struggling, man. There's a lot of people in this country living paycheck to paycheck. And what do you do if your 8, 9-year-old kid goes up to you and says, Mom, Dad, I want to play hockey. Sorry, we'll ask Santa, but we might not be able to do it this year. It's really sad. And there are so many great people all over the country, especially in this community, that are doing what they can to help kids, get them involved in sports, which more kids need to get involved in sports, get out of the house, compete, learn a different sport, but maybe their family can't afford it. Well, that's where Gina Yusufzai comes in. Yusufzai. I knew I would screw up that name. I knew I would do that, Gina. But the Jake Helb's Foundation, which the Hockey Foundation, which helps raise money so that underprivileged, families are able to get their kids involved in hockey. I just think it's so cool what you're doing, Gina. First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story. So let's start here, Gina. When did you first say to yourself, I want to do something. I want to make a difference. I want to help kids, and get them involved in a sport where maybe, some kids wouldn't be able to, because let's be honest, hockey equipment's expensive. When did the idea first enter your mind?
It was when my son was playing in a travel game when he was 8, and he was a goalie then. And as a parent, I thought he could do better in the game. He wasn't doing great, maybe the judgmental side of me, but I just kind of thought to myself, he didn't really look into it. He didn't and I felt like, man, and I get it, right? He's 8, but I just thought to myself, hockey, especially before the Knights came, it was extremely expensive and hard to get into the sport. And I just thought to myself, I love the game so much. How many other kids could benefit from an opportunity to have, because for me, I was a single mom when my son first started playing hockey, and I couldn't afford it. I had to borrow money from people, and it was different then because we came from California where then we had played against sports. We didn't have anything like that here 12, 13 years ago. So it was during that game that when he was playing, I realized I want to be able to help other kids so that it could help grow the sport, because hockey wasn't big then.
Right.
So I want to be able to give what I gave to my son to other children.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And, you started the Jake Kelbs Hockey Foundation. How many kids do you think you've impacted because of this foundation and affected in a positive way?
Oh boy. That's a really good question.
I know you wouldn't have the exact number, but
I mean,
hundreds, is it fair to say hundreds, thousands?
Oh, yeah. I'd probably say maybe like around 1,000. I mean, we've been
That's
around for
incredible.
7 years now, so.
That's so incredible.
And it's on many different levels too, right?
Yeah.
From giving them gear to financial assistance to, opportunities at even playing at the arena that I'm at. So in many different scales, I would say 1,000.
That is so cool. And not to open up a can of worms involving race, but I guess in this situation I might do so. Basketball, football, not as expensive. You could just pick up a basketball and learn the game, and you don't need a lot of money to do that. But, and I hate to use the term elitist sport, but let's just call it for what it is. Sometimes in the sport of hockey, we don't have a lot of minorities that maybe will pick up a golf club or pick up a hockey stick.
Right.
And I would say a big part of that is financially. It's not because they don't want to, right? We need more minorities playing hockey. We need more minorities playing golf. It's not because they're not capable, right?
Right.
It's because maybe at times some of the families don't have the funds to be able to do it. Is that fair to say?
Oh, 100%. And it's not just about the program or the hockey program in itself. It's getting the access to the gear. And, like, for instance, like my kid, like he grew out of a pair of skates within 6 months, and you have to, it's the continuing of, as they get older, the hockey gear gets more expensive too. So be able to keep up with the sport alone is expensive too.
I'm just curious. Yeah, let's talk about that. Like how much, if you got a teenager, let's just go 13, 14 years old. Let's just start there maybe.
Okay.
How much does it cost to have not even the best equipment, but at least proper equipment to be able to play the sport?
So when we came out of COVID, our rink opened back up in June of 2020, and my son in 3 months had grown out of his pair of skates. And I had to purchase him brand new skates. I'll never forget it. It was $200, and that was just for an average pair of hockey skates.
Wow, that's not cheap.
No, it's not.
That's not cheap. And as you mentioned, as your kid gets older, the equipment gets more and more expensive. Can you give me a story of, like, I don't know, maybe an 8, 9, 10-year-old kid that maybe has never played hockey before, maybe only played a few times, but parents didn't have the money to be able to properly, equip that child, and the moment maybe you were there when that child was able to get that equipment and the smile on their face, that has to make you feel really good as well, to know that you're a part of this. Like, I'm sure you've had moments like that before with some of these kids.
Oh yeah. So back in, what was it, like 2018, 2019, I used to store all the gear donations that I would collect from families in my garage. So when a family would call me and say, hey, like, my kid wants to get started in hockey, can I do your, do you have gear for me? I would invite them into my home, strangers essentially, right? And I would gear them up in my living room, and I would pull stuff out of the garage. And I would always tell families, like, I don't really know if I have everything, but whatever I do have, I will absolutely give it to you for free. And at that time, I actually had a beginner hockey program. Well, I had a beginner hockey program, and they didn't have to, but I would invite them to participate in my Hockey 101, but they could have went anywhere, but it is really rewarding to know that growing the game is also giving them the accessibility to be able to even try the game, right? Because if you want somebody to fall in love with it, you have to kind of remove those obstacles for them. And I figured by giving them the gear, that's one less thing they have to worry about.
I think that's great. And another issue with the sport of hockey, and by the way, full disclosure, I love hockey. Me and my dad had season tickets where I bonded with my dad when I was, 10, 11, 12 years old. And I'm from Connecticut, and we would have Hartford Whalers season tickets. And I fell in love with the game of the hockey at a young age, and I was a goalie for a few years. I was more skilled at other sports than hockey, but I fell in love with the sport of hockey. I've always loved the game. I think it's some of the best athletes in the world play hockey professionally, and it's such a fun sport to watch. I do want to ask you this question, even though it's about hockey, it might be a little off topic from your foundation. But I think it's an interesting question, which is fighting in hockey, right? You hear the term hockey moms all the time, which I don't think it's a bad thing. And especially, gosh, the stuff you're doing is so positive. I was at a Vegas Golden Knights game, and I was at Whalers games too when I was a kid, where, parents will be sitting with their kids, and the parents will start yelling out, among other things, "Fight! Drop the glove! Fight! Fight!" And as you know, in the NHL, it's allowed. I mean, yeah, you're going to get a penalty, but it's allowed.
Yeah.
And if you do that outside of a sport, it's assault, and you go to jail. I wanted to get your thoughts on that because, listen, I love hockey just as much as you do, but I've always felt a little strange about that. As a parent, how do you feel about that in the sport of hockey?
I don't know, because my oldest played Jake, and he's an 18U this year, and he stopped playing. But I could show you a few videos where he got in fights on the ice, but he was more of the aggressor, I guess you could say.
Right.
And it is a little embarrassing, but at the same time, it was kind of like, oh well, at least my kid's the one that's
right.
not getting
beat up.
Beat up out there. You know what I mean? My kid's the one that's
right.
So I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know, because even like my youngest pushes and shoves on the ice, and he doesn't take no crap. It's a very
physical sport.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And it doesn't bother me so much about the fights necessarily, as long, that's why we have the refs to control the game and all that stuff. But I think the only thing that worries me the most is my oldest. During a game, he lost his footing, and he was flying. Ooh. And he put both of his legs into the boards, and he actually broke his leg he shattered it, or a spiral fracture from his knee to his ankle. And that part has traumatized me, Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to him. I remember, I think I'm getting his name right, Travis Roy, who was a hockey player 25 plus years ago, first time on the ice, scholarship at Boston College, first shift, paralyzed, hit the boards.
Yeah.
And he passed away a few years ago, but he did so much. That's the thing I wanted to talk to you about, because we live in a society today where there's so much division, right? But yet there's so many people like you out there that don't get recognized and need to be recognized for their charitable, what they do. There's all sorts of different ways people can help people, right? You can work, soup kitchen, you could donate your time,
right.
and you can raise money for all different types of different organizations. You could help the homeless. There's so many different things you could do.
Right.
And in your realm, in helping kids, and I just think that's so important, because there's so many children out there. Maybe some children out there, maybe that don't have the best families, maybe some that do, regardless, that they need activities. I feel like, just going home and doing homework is not necessarily always a good thing.
Right.
Get out there, play sports, make new friends, be active. It's healthy to do that instead of staying home and snacking on junk food and learning how to add and subtract, which is important. You need to learn how to add and
Yeah.
I'm still not good at that today. But you know what I mean? Like, as a country, kids, it's not easy being a kid today, right?
No.
You get up really early in the morning. You go to school for, 8 hours. Your teachers give you a load of homework. And then you go home. You need an activity. You need something to do. And that could be anything. But
Right.
I feel like, what you're doing is it's more than just learning the game of hockey. I feel like what you're doing. I think it's more important than just learning a sport, which is important. But you're also getting life lessons, could be from a coach. You're making new friends. You're socializing. And for maybe a child that, and I've seen this, where a child is I don't want to use the term antisocial, but maybe a little socially awkward. And then all of a sudden they play a sport that maybe they get good at.
Right.
And all of a sudden they come out of that shell, right?
Right.
So I just think from a psychological standpoint, what you're doing too, and just getting them involved
Yeah.
and being a part of something really cool and learning a sport, I just think we need more of that. We need more of that. And it's so emphasized in school, where you have gym in elementary school once a week or whatever it is.
Yeah.
We need that. That's not enough. Okay. The academic part of it is important. I'm not saying it's not, but I think we need more physical activities. Does that make sense?
No, 100%.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just don't feel like we have enough of that. If you don't mind me asking you this, I'm sure you've had some prominent people that have made some big, any celebrities, anybody worth noting, any big names, either locally that have been involved and given you some donations?
There was one particular family. They wanted to stay private. He actually came to me, I want to say in 2019, and really wanted to focus on the growth of girls hockey. And he made private donations every year to the
Considerable
organization.
donations.
Yes.
Wow, that's great.
To where we scholarshiped. At that time, there was really only the Junior Golden Knights girls program, but he wanted it to go specifically to the girls' travel teams, right? So we created and we named it and everything, and we would do it every year. We would scholarship girls to be able to afford
And I would
the travel
assume this
costs.
prominent person has a daughter or daughters.
Yes.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to try to guess. There's too many famous people in Las Vegas.
He's not necessarily famous, but it was
prominent person.
Yeah, just I mean, really somebody that loved the sport. They were from Canada, so Canada, huge for hockey, right?
Sure.
In Vegas, I mean, this was 4 years ago, so I
That's
mean,
great.
I
That's
mean, we're
super
definitely in a more growth today than we were, 4 or 5 years ago. But
That's
yeah,
super cool.
so
Well, but also, I don't know if some of these families do this, but do they ever give the equipment back to you as they get older and they need better equipment? That's super cool too.
Yeah.
I was thinking about that. That's super cool. So, like, if somebody wants to, like that family, which I think is awesome, if somebody wants to give you a call, contact you, learn a bit more about your organization, wants to make a donation, like to learn more about you and the organization, where would they go to do that?
so they would just go to our foundation's website, which is www.hockeyforkids.org.
I think that's great. How many? I think I might have asked you this before, but how many teams have you guys construct actual teams on the ice?
Yeah, so back in 2017, my foundation had an opportunity to run its own organization out of it's called Hilo Park now, but it was Pepsi Ice Arena, and before that it was the Sobe Ice Arena. So I have a youth hockey organization called the Las Vegas Ice Warriors that is ran under the foundation. But yes, we facilitate teams. And at one point, when Station still owned the property, I was running like the Learn to Skate, Little Warriors, the Adult League, Adult Learn to Play, House League, and all that stuff. So
It's interesting. One of my favorite parts sometimes of watching an NHL game is when they put the Pee Wee hockey players out there in the middle of a period and they play for and you see how excited these young kids are if they score a goal. It's like, it's so cool to see, and it's
well, especially to be on the NHL ice.
right. And like, again, there's a lot of division in this country, and we. I certainly hear it on this show every day. Maybe I'm part of the problem. I don't know. But when I see the joy of people in the stands, rooting on these kids, they don't care which team scores a goal. They just want to see kids score goals because it's fun. It brings people together.
Right.
Now, there are some crazy parents out there, right? Right. Let's be honest.
No comment.
Yeah.
No comment.
There are a few crazy parents out there that, being a referee myself, basketball for 20 years, there are some parents out there that maybe put a little bit too much pressure on their kids. But I think, the most important thing is make sure your kids are having a good time. Make sure they're enjoying what they're doing. At the same time, learn and show discipline. But life is so damn short, right? And your kids grow so fast.
And that's an important element, I would say, when it comes to travel hockey is, the kids aren't going to remember if they won a tournament or if they lost a game. They're going to remember the road trip with their mom and dad. They're going to remember playing knee hockey in the hotel room. They're going to remember, the time that the team got together at dinner and all the parents came together. And it's really one big happy family. And it's just, those are the things that the kids are going to remember. They're not going to remember the score of the game. And, with how fast life is now, to be able to, have a family go on a road trip to like Utah or Arizona or, New York or whatever, it's the moments together that I think that truly count more than the game itself. The game brings out so much more than just the hockey puck.
I agree 150%. And, hockey is such a team sport. We're not talking about somebody picking up a tennis racket or somebody picking up a golf club. I mean, those are not team sports. When you think of hockey, it's such a team game, right?
Yes.
Yes, you have some positions that are higher profile positions, like the goaltender position, but it's such a team sport. And I rarely ever hear people say, "Oh, you're hogging the puck." Like you hear that in basketball sometimes.
Puck hog.
Yeah. You don't usually hear that very often in hockey. And it's such a unique sport, and it's a worldwide sport, right? Hockey's so huge in Europe, and now it's big in other countries too. And you mentioned women's hockey, right? I met some at a Knights game. I was lucky enough to meet some on the USA hockey team, the female hockey team, the women's hockey team, and they were just such lovely people, such nice people, and great athletes.
Yeah.
It's such a worldwide sport. I would say hockey is more of a worldwide sport now than maybe ever before, right?
Yeah, it's definitely grown for sure.
Yeah. So with it growing like that, why is it you think that? Listen, on the West Coast, it's growing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure it's growing enough. I'm not sure and listen, I get it. There's not enough hockey rinks here. That's a big problem, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's another thing is, my kids can walk down the street and go to the community park, and there's a basketball court there, where it costs a lot of money to operate and build an ice arena,
It does. It's expensive. But, I come from the East Coast where every high school team had a hockey team. We all had a hockey team. Heck, we had JV teams. I mean,
I think Minnesota just had their state high school championship game. And it was like in a huge arena and it was packed. I don't think there was an empty seat in that building.
Yeah, it's East Coast hockey, and obviously in Canada,
Yeah.
but on the West Coast, it's starting to pick up.
Yeah.
And I think having NHL hockey certainly here
big
in Las
time.
Vegas helps big time, and it gets more people involved. And it also helps when your team wins a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
That doesn't hurt either. But I do feel like there needs to be more hockey rinks. And again, I know that's expensive. I get that. It's not
Right.
easy to maintain a hockey rink, and you have to, if you're running a business, you want it to be profitable.
Right.
I understand that. What do you think can be done to get more hockey rinks here on the West Coast?
We need investors, that are, that aren't just about like making money, but, more like investors that want to come in and see the sport grow, right? Because, while we talk about youth hockey so much, there's so much more to an ice rink than youth hockey. We have adult leagues that we don't have enough ice in town to facilitate how many adults are playing in adult leagues.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, for sure. Now, obviously, you want people to be able to donate what they can.
Right.
It doesn't matter whether it's $5. Hey, we'd love you to donate $500 if you can afford to. But at the same time, when somebody does make a donation, are they invited to maybe watch a team skate or play? Or
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
That's cool. And it doesn't matter what the donation is. You want people just get involved and do whatever you can, right? Do whatever you can. We don't want to take your son's or daughter's college tuition away, but we want to also, what can you afford? If it's $5 or $20 or $100, they know that every dollar is going to go, right, to helping these kids get hockey equipment that they desperately need, and give out that information so people can get involved again.
It's www.hockeyforkids.org.
Awesome. Well, Gina, thank you so much for doing what you do. I think it's so awesome. When I first heard about this and our mutual friend Ileana told us about it, I was like, wow, this is so cool. I'm so happy that we're able to do this, and I love what you're doing.
Thank you so much.
So again, yes, absolutely. It's the Jake Kelbs Hockey Foundation. The website, give it out again so people have it. Even though they hear the commercial, I want you to say it.
It's okay. It's okay. It's www.hockeyforkids.org.
And I love the name of that, too, hockeyforkids.org. You couldn't come up with a better name. That's so cool. Please check it out. All the listeners on there, hockeyforkids.org. Support what Gina is doing. Help these kids get equipment and learn the sport of hockey, which is an incredible game to watch and to play, which I do myself. And I played years ago. I'm too old to do it now. I can't skate.
No way.
For the hell of me, I can't skate.
We
Gina,
got guys out there 65 that are skating.
They're in better shape than me. I'm not a great skater. Maybe in high school I was. Gina, thank you so much for being here. I know you'll come back again soon. We want to get an update on how the organization is doing, and we want to get as many people involved with this wonderful hockey foundation. I appreciate it, Gina. Thank you so much for being here. Appreciate it. And let's have a great weekend, everybody. We end Friday on a positive note. I like that. A lot of college basketball to watch in Vegas this weekend. And we will see you all on Monday. My social media is YouTube at PTL Radio Show. If you'd like to subscribe to that, it is free. Check out Gina's website. And we will see you guys on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.